I'll start with some introductions. So my name is Faye. I'm a lecturer in medical ethics at Lancaster Medical School, but as part of my role, I'm also a director of something that's called Special Study Modules, and I'll say a little bit about what that is shortly. And I'm here presenting with the wonderful Liz Walkden, who is our faculty learning technologist and former teacher, high school teacher. She comes with two-pronged expertise, so she's an absolute legend and wonderful to have. So I'll start, then I'll hand over to Liz, and then yeah, we'll sort of tag team. So thanks so much, Angela, for having us. I lecture on something that's called the MBChB, and some of you will know what that is, and some of you won't. It's the Bachelor of Medicine, Bachelor of Surgery degree, and compared to a lot of degree programs on offer at universities, it's quite unique. So it's highly interdisciplinary. So it's not just medical sciences that you'd expect to find, you know, things like anatomy and pathology and pharmacology and all those things. It's also psychology, it's also medical ethics and law, it's some epidemiology, stats and maths, all sorts of things. And it runs over a 5-year programme. And the intake per year is currently 129. We have early clinical experience at Lancaster from year 2, which increases over time. So that means that most of our academic teaching is front-loaded in the degree programme. So we get access to students in the main in year 1 and year 2, and then it's much more limited after that because they're spending a lot more time in hospital and surgery and things. It's assessment-wise, it's at a very high stakes assessment. There are very limited assessment points. We assess our students by exams, sort of one time a year, a summative exam once a year. There is a formative exam kind of halfway through the year, but really it's very high stakes and it's exam based. We're subject to external assessment as well with the MLA, the GMC's medical licensing assessment. And for that reason, assessment is it's very difficult to be creative with how we're assessing students, and exams are well known to be the very uninclusive as far as you know, developing assessment and curriculum that meets the needs of multiple needs that students have these days. So in my role as Director of Special Study Modules, I'm in charge of developing a part of our curriculum which gives students the opportunity to do a bit of a deep dive into a specific area that interests them. And this runs over year 1 and 2. It's a complete change of pace from the rest of the curriculum, which is very intensive. And in the special study modules, our aim is to develop academic and research skills that they may or may not go on to use in their careers, but definitely they're useful. The academic skills that they develop are really useful for them in terms of managing their learning across the 5-year programme. It includes everything from kind of time management and organisation, working together, as well as using academic databases, doing literature searches, all those sorts of things as well. The programme is collaboratively taught, so that's between myself and our learning developer and also our faculty librarian. So that's quite unique. It's held up as a model of best practice across the university, and it's really nice to bring together those different areas of expertise and expose our students to lots of different services that we offer to support them in the university. And in the first year, SSM1, as we call it, is formative. So this is a complete programme of formative assessment where we're able to do lots of skills development and uniquely able to design and trial alternative assessments, which is what we're here to talk about today. So In our formative assessment, what myself and Liz worked on was basically trying to make this particular aspect of this suite of assessment. We wanted to make it fairer and more inclusive and more meaningful. So obviously that means accommodating the diverse needs of our students, which may or may not be captured by ILSPs, and allowing multiple methods for them to engage with the material that we have to offer them, multiple ways for them to express the learning outcomes, and also building in lots of opportunities to receive and respond to feedback. Importantly, we wanted to make sure that it remained authentic to the summative assessment that was in year 2. And as I say, we're subject to external scrutiny by the GMC, so it is important that it's aligned to our GMC outcomes for graduates. So this particular assessment was conceptualised and delivered by myself and our learning developer, Dr. Beth Caldwell, and librarian Jem Sosnowski. Prior to the change, they did a sort of peer-reviewed abstract task, which was hangover from pre-COVID days when our cohort was much smaller. During COVID was put online, and so we kind of kept it online as our cohort grew, because it would be unmanageable to do this particular task face to face. But by virtue of it being online and the particular time of year that it was delivered, which is the last week of Michaelmas term, we had terribly low engagement. The students didn't really enjoy doing the task. They didn't feel kind of engaged in doing it. They didn't come to the online workshops, and if they did come, they didn't want to talk. So it really needed overhauling. So what we did was develop a team-based poster task, which retained the peer review element, but built in lots of face-to-face work, lots of collaborative learning, and that's what we're here to talk about. So we had an initial workshop, which we split into 3 parts. The first part of the workshop was learning about synthesizing information from multiple sources, which is, as it happens, one of the explicit GMC outcomes for graduates, that the medical students are required to leave their medical degree being able to synthesize information from multiple sources. We focused on team building and group work, and then on the skills around actually making a poster. It was very much about skills development, to team building, and on the task management. So what is it you're going to have to go away and do? How are you going to do it? And making sure that students had the tools to hand and were comfortable using the tools. At the end of the week, we then had conference-style lightning poster presentations. These were in person, which logistically was quite challenging, with nearly 140 students in our cohort. But we did that in 3 groups, and the hope was that it was going to be relaxed and fun, in scare quotes, because we know that what we think is fun isn't always what students think is fun, and that there'd be lots of flexibility built into the delivery of the week. And all this was made possible by our wonderful learning technologist, Liz, who will have a chance to tell you about her side of things now.
Thanks, Faye. So as Faye said, we really wanted to make this as inclusive as possible, as meaningful as possible, and as authentic as possible. So in our discussions, we were talking about quite a lot of different elements and ways in which we could do that. But kind of 3 main things that I wanted to pull out was that we really pulled in our understanding of how students learn and how that they interact with online platforms, particularly our VLE, which is Moodle that we use at Lancaster. And we've done quite a lot of user experience work in the past, looking at survey results, having focus groups with students, and we tried to use what came out of those in the design of not just the kind of day itself and the posters, but also the work leading up to that event. We also talked a lot about CAST's Universal Design for Learning framework, which, if you're not familiar with it, has kind of 3 parts to it. It kind of focuses on giving students chance to have multiple methods of engagement, multiple methods of representation, and multiple methods of kind of action and expression. And then the final thing that we just thought about was, staff workload, how they're going to feel about kind of facilitating this, because as Faye said, it was her, Jem and Beth who were kind of working together on this, and I wanted it to be kind of as smooth as possible for them as well as smooth for the students. And there was also quite a lot of kind of anxiety around this, as there always is when we try and throw out kind of let's do some group work. We're all really supportive of group work, but this was actually not very long after the Bristol versus Eberhardt case when we actually did this. So there was staff who were, quite reticent with us about that we were going to do, a poster task with students presenting. So what we did was, in terms of Moodle design, we made sure that it had kind of quite a contemporary design, feeding off what students have told us that they want, with images, with a weekly design structure, and there's a little snapshot on the screen there for you as well. We used the gingerbread house kind of image. It started off as a picture of just some random Lego bricks, and eventually, when in the final week when they were delivering the poster, it's a full-scale fancy 2-story gingerbread Christmas house, because we wanted to show students just how everything is scaffolded and building week on week to help them in this final output, which is the peer-reviewed presentation. Everything on there was digitally accessible. So we made sure that we were using Blackboard Ally, which is the tool that we use in Moodle, to make sure that all the documents and things that we were sharing and the PowerPoints, anyone could access them, and there was lots of alternative formats available. As I've already mentioned, the learning was really scaffolded, and we made sure that in some of the things that we were using with the students, that they had real agency over how they used them, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And there was quite a big focus on community building on the MBChB programme, as Faye mentioned. It's 5 years of study, and as you just got from Faye's snapshot, it's pretty intensive and it's quite stressful for students. And this is one of the first chances that they actually get to work with their cohort and produce something together. Hopefully, this is part of their community building and building their support network as they go through the next 5 years. And at Lancaster, as we mentioned, we want the assessment to be authentic. One of the kind of strands of our graduate attributes is professional excellence, and we want students to be kind of equipped with the skills and the attitudes and things that they need to take forward. So just some of the ways that we tried to respect student differences and give them multiple means of kind of engagement and representation and action in this assessment was through things like the use of Teams. So it created an information kind of sheet on Moodle where it told them how in the workshop they could use Microsoft Teams to help coordinate their presentation before they actually delivered it. We also gave students different roles. So there might be one who's kind of the leader, one who's an organizer, one or two who might actually deliver, because not everybody had to deliver the poster on the day. We might have someone who actually designed the poster to make sure that, maybe if they were really great with design tools and things, that they could be the one to take the lead on that. So everybody had this kind of ownership over what they wanted to deliver within their group. And then just some basics, just making sure that we restricted access for students and that things appeared automatically as and when they needed them, and that the groups were split up and they accessed their reading material. It wasn't like they saw a jumble of everybody's reading material and couldn't find where they needed to go. And then in the workshop, we use Mentimeter as well, which we have a license to kind of get students to engage in ways that they might not normally have done. So these are just some screenshots of one of the sections or one of the weeks in Moodle, and you can see there that we've got the green gauge showing that these documents that we're sharing are digitally accessible, which is something that in previous iterations of SSM1 and SSM2 assessments that they hadn't always been digitally accessible. So a lot of work went into that. And here you can see that we were trying to restrict access for students to just the resources they needed to see. So group 2 would see topic 2 and wouldn't see topic 1's stuff, for example, just so that they're not getting anxious about where to find things and navigate. At the end of kind of all these weeks of learning, as Faye said, they deliver the posters, and it might be one person, it might be multiple people within the 3 rooms that they were spread across. And after each poster, students were asked to give feedback on their peers' kind of work. This was done via Moodle, via the kind of questionnaire activity. Students could use any device to access this. So it could be done on their smartphone or their tablet or their laptop, whatever they brought to the session. We tried to keep it really short, so we used kind of radio buttons for the first few questions. There weren't many questions at all, so that they could give quite targeted kind of responses. And then they got 2 short answer questions where they could give a giveaway and a takeaway to their colleagues. And we did kind of prep how they might, you know, deliver this, so it was really constructive. But a giveaway and a takeaway, you're probably familiar with, you know, ways to give students means to give feedback to peers. So you might have used 2 stars and a wish or other methods to do that. So that was the one that we decided to use. Over to you, Faye.
Thank you. Okay, so just reflecting on how inclusive our assessment was. So UDL curriculums, they aim to respect different learner preferences and play to different students' strengths and meet the needs of learners, but importantly, by minimising adjustments during the delivery of sessions and the delivery of teaching. So it's an anticipatory approach to being inclusive. And IPAA is Inclusive Pedagogical Approach and Action, really focuses on the collaboration between peers in their learning activities. So those are the kind of two frameworks that we were focused on. So for us, the group project had lots of flexibility built into it, and a focus on self-organising, which enabled students to play to their strengths that they felt they had. Nobody was assigned a role. Everybody took a role of their own, and they shared responsibilities within those roles for taking different aspects of the task and seeing it through, and working in a team. Working as a group and working in a team was the language we used for this particular activity. Was quite new to them, so there was lots of skills around actually being a team. One of the things we used Mentimeter for was sharing kind of principles of good team working. So that was done in a group on the big screen. You know, what kind of principles might you want your team to be working around? And that was really a really useful experience, because they could share ideas for how they would approach things like unforeseen absences, when they felt that somebody wasn't doing what they'd agreed to do, those sorts of things. So that was a nice way to use the technology in the delivery of the session. And technology was incorporated into delivery, as well as the assessment and the feedback. And this really supported directed independent learning and inclusion. So having the team space, for example, they were able to, what Liz had was the way Liz set it up, which is really great, is that students, obviously they use Teams for joining meetings. It's quite a passive way to use Teams, but the way that Liz set it up was that they were in charge of their own team space, like autonomously kind of taking control of their own space. They had to-do lists. They could use the calendar to organize their time. And I think that was a really nice way to use technology to develop that collaborative learning that IPAA is aiming to achieve. And finally, we had multiple methods of students to demonstrate the learning objectives, both through a self-reflection activity, so they could kind of, there was a degree of accountability in there, you know, like how well have I worked in a team, you know, did I do what I said I was going to do, that sort of thing. So that was a way they could demonstrate to themselves that they had met the learning objectives. We also had the peer review activity, and we always have a module evaluation at the end, which gives students that opportunity to reflect on that module, what that module's meant for them, what they've achieved out of it, how they've benefited, and also a chance for us to learn about how we could improve. So in terms of promoting student learning, the team working in MS Teams was great and really developed team cohesion and motivated that directed independent learning. As I said, loads of opportunities for reflection and accountability through the peer feedback and self-reflection activities. These were really nicely aligned with the LOs and built into and integrated into our content. There were a formative peer-reviewed the formative peer-reviewed assessment activity was all captured in Moodle. And finally, that feedback was all integrated into the in-person activities. It wasn't sort of tagged on. It wasn't something that they were sent afterwards as a like, now can you reflect or now can you feedback? It was all part and parcel of the learning. So that assessment was assessment as learning, which I think is a really great way to use our formative assessment experiences and opportunities.
So getting to kind of student feedback. So as Faye said, we gave students an opportunity to not only feedback on the posters to their peers, but also to give us some feedback on how they felt that the whole assessment went and their experience of SSM1. And I've just got some quotes here on the screen, and you can see here that they are pretty much all positive, and that was because the feedback was overwhelmingly positive, which I was quite surprised by, not because I didn't think me and Faye did a good job, but because I know that students are quite reticent when they have to do group work and that they often do have difficulties. And there's quite a lot of anxiety often about certain people pulling their weight in the team. And while we might have had a couple of people mention about, dynamics within the team perhaps not being perfect, actually most people said it was an amazing experience, that they started to actually build that support network I mentioned at the start. They got to speak to people they'd never spoken to before. And one student mentioned how at school, kind of all their experience before university, they'd not done much group work at all. Large class sizes, having to get through curriculums really quick. So they really valued that we had actually changed the pace, that this was very different form of assessment to the typical kind of exams and things that they're used to. So it was just lovely to have all that positive feedback. Things that we though took away from our own experiences, but also from the feedback, was we were short on space, and some of the students had mentioned that, particularly in the workshop when they had to find each other, and kind of it was a bit of a squeeze for some of the students in the rooms that we had available to use. Students did comment that they would like a bit more time to develop their posters and to actually collaborate and work as a team. They were enjoying that team building and wanted a bit more time for that. We want to find ways that we can share the peer feedback after the event a bit more easily with students. We could, I think, make better use of the library resources that are available, and rather sharing articles by PDF, which is what we had done, actually share them via the library so that they're aware of what we're using, the subscriptions, and it just takes away some of the work that has to be done to make articles digitally accessible. And then completely forgot to share all the articles after the presentation, so that if a student had been interested in someone else's poster, they could then access that reading material to delve into that a little bit more. And that's something that would be great, I think, for Stretch and Challenge, in the future. So thank you. And I can already see there's quite a lot of questions in the chat.